Biz with you today, reviewing a particular vise I would like to draw your attention to. Today we're going to be looking at the Blackfoot Mongoose from Griffin Enterprises in good old Kalispell, Montana. Those of you who have not been in Kalispell, Montana, need to visit Kalispell, Montana. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. This is a approximately $150 package vise, and it's a little bit different than some of the other ones that we've looked at. Fairly inexpensive vise. Obviously it comes in a neat little carrying case like this, which is kind of unique, and most of the Griffin vises come with these carrying cases. But if we open this thing up, you'll see that it's really designed for portability, and it comes pretty much with everything you're going to see here, including this C-clamp. So all you do is you grab the vise, and this little material clip right here is actually the only thing that you've got to mount onto the apparatus. It's got a way for it to slide up and down, and you can position this thing in many different ways. So it's kind of a neat little option, and it is available on a few of the Griffin models. But this is a rotary vise. Okay, this is so that comes with the C-clamp. For the purposes of our demonstration today, I am going to leave the C-clamp alone. It also comes with an extension piece like this, and I'm actually going to use a base that I've got with, I'm going to set this aside here, and I've got a base right here which actually came from my Patriot, my Griffin Patriot vise, which is, I just love this one. This is a sort of a semi-rotational vise. But I'm going to show you the Blackfoot Mongoose here. I put on the extension, and then I'm going to go ahead and slide this into the base here. And you can see that these Griffin bases, by the way, are very nice. Now this vise does not come with this pedestal base. You'd have to buy it separately. But if I was going to buy a base for a vise today, I'd buy either a Peak base or a Griffin base. Why? Because they're both nice and heavy, and you need a heavy base when you're tying especially larger flies. Now let's look at some of the features on this puppy. It's got a nut in the back here for adjusting the tension on the rotation. Once you get it pretty much the way you want it, and you can continue to tighten it up until, and the more you tighten it, obviously the more difficult it is to move. But once you get the rotation approximately close, then you can take this one right here and sort of fine tune it. And I like to have my rotation so that it goes fairly easy, but you know, doesn't move too much. So you want to get that just so that so you got to move it, and there's a little bit of tension there. You'll also note on this particular one that it's got a little bit different style of adjusting the jaws here. We'll get a look at it here. And the way this works is there's a little apparatus right here. And let me see if I can make that a little bit easier for you to see. There's a little apparatus right here that you would use to adjust the aperture of the vise. And then you go ahead and tighten the hook in here. So the way this thing works is I take my hook and I move the aperture here so that the hook just barely fits in there. And I can tighten it or I can loosen it for a larger hook. So kind of a one-size-fits-all here. This thing works fairly well that way. Loosen it up so it just barely slides through there. And then I can tighten it up with the main knot right here. Okay, so I can tighten that up right there and get it the way I want it. For most of these hooks, I like to get them for a larger, thicker hook like this. I like to run it back a little bit in the jaws. For a finer hook, a smaller hook, I might wind up putting it closer to the very edge. But I'm going to tighten that thing up until it gets to the point where it doesn't move much, and then you've got a nice fixation there. And you can get some of these other items going here. Let me move back on this a little bit, and you can see that we've got, this comes with it as well, and with the, in the case comes, for those of you that like these bobbin cradles, and I kind of like them, seems to be a time and place for them. They're easily to kind of get out of the way. You can adjust the tension on this thing, and you can swing it out, swing it back in as you need it. So let's real quick just sort of show you how this works. I'm just going to throw on, I think the real advantage for a lot of these rotational vices is when it comes to obviously spinning materials on here. And I'm just going to show you how easy it is to use this little vise with something, just tying something like a woolly bugger, where you're going to have some hackle to spin, and you're also going to, now notice I'm putting this in the material clip right here. I can move that around a little bit, so that's kind of handy to have, and again I can move that a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my thread forward, and when you're using a bobbin cradle, not a real bad idea to throw a half hitch in the front. Then I'm going to pull this bobbin cradle over here. You get the height, you can move it up a little bit so that it maybe is just about the height of the hook itself. Then I'll bring it up so it's not hanging down too far here, and we'll get it like that. So now we're going to show you the magic of the rotational vise. Grabbing onto your chenille material, and the only thing you got to do here, you got to watch out when you first start for the point of that hook, so that you don't nip some sort of material and cut it and pop it on that thing. So I'm just, see how easy that is and how consistent. Now of course if I want to, I can go back on it a little bit, build the body up a little bit if towards the head if I want to, and then I've got a real nice consistent spin on there. So I'm gonna, let me just put this back on here real quick. I'm gonna move this bobbin cradle out of the way, which I often do. I'm going to kind of get this on there like that, and take this off, little piece off. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this hackle, and I'm going to pull this hackle forward. And you're going to need to experiment a little bit to determine the best way to turn that hackle so that the fibers kind of go in a rear direction as you bring them forward. And time will tell how you actually do that, and you experiment with this a little bit. I can see right now that I did not get that chenille tied off, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw a couple of quick ones on there, and I can kind of clean that up later. But I'm going to keep bringing this forward. You can see how just easy that is to bring it forward. I can leave a little bit extra in the front. Now I'm going to come over, I'm going to capture this with some thread to hold it down into place. Move it back like this, and I'm going to hold that material back and then come forward with it. Once I've got it on there good, I'll just take my scissors, pop that off, and clean it up as I need to. But you'll notice that typically when you're finishing these woolly buggers and things like that, you typically want to draw back on the hackle. But the point here is not necessarily tying a woolly bugger, although Rotary Vise is a great tool for tying these kinds of flies. There's a bunch of other flies that are really easy to tie with a rotational vise. But you can see basically how easy and how simple it is to use this thing. This thing is especially handy for as a traveling type vise. It's very simple to use, it's very simple to set up, and you can crank out a lot of flies. When the fly is done, throw a couple of half hitches on there. When the fly is done, go ahead and just unloosen that knob and pull your fly right out. And there you go. The Blackfoot Mongoose vise from Griffin Enterprises. Take a look at this vise. Pretty inexpensive, nice rotational type vise. For those of you that perhaps don't like the cam action and just like to really finely adjust the amount of tension that you've got on your hook. A very reasonably priced vise, and most of the products that I've come across from Griffin are top quality, and they all have a lifetime guarantee, so you can't beat that. Brad Miller with flybass.biz. We'll see you soon.